Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. And today's episode is Charmed Season 4, Episode 11, Lost and Bound. The episode in a nutshell is a brief reminder of what happens in the episode. So, in this episode, there's three main plots that we kind of follow. The first plot is Phoebe is worried about becoming like Bewitched and like Samantha losing her own identity and her ability to practice her magic freely once she becomes married and becoming kind of a stagnant housewife who's only cooking, cleaning, etc., has no friends, has no contact outside of her husband, etc., etc. And Cole gives her Grams's engagement ring that she had used 6 times on her 6 different marriages. And this ultimately leads to Phoebe turning black and white as she ends up becoming that very housewife that she had feared becoming. And of course, Bewitched, taking place so long ago, was a black and white TV show originally before it was remastered into color in the later seasons. But originally was black and white. And so that whole saga happens, and of course, while she's black and white and while she's under this hex, she isn't able to write spells or fight or do anything that she normally does, which leaves the sisters in a bit of a lurch because the second major plot point is that Paige gets Cole a job in the legal section of her workplace, social services, and he enters into legal aid department on her recommendation. However, the last time he was a lawyer, he was a demon, so he ends up becoming violent with his first case, and this ends with him being fired, though he claims he quit. But while they're at work together, a boy Tyler comes in, and he's run away from home because he ended up setting his foster parents' couch on fire. And when Paige realizes that he has magic, she then brings him to the manor, where Piper and Leo have been fighting about their hypothetical future children and whether or not they should raise them with their powers intact or bind their powers until they're older so that they can have a childhood free of magic. Piper's concerns, of course, are that her and her sisters were so unprepared when they got their powers in their 20s that she feels that that was a contributing factor to Prue's death and doesn't want to leave their children in the lurch. But Leo assures her that binding the powers doesn't mean they're going to keep their children ignorant. And so, like, their children are still going to be able to prepare, have the theoretical knowledge, know about magic, know about demons, but they'll be safe and protected and not have to deal with having powers in a non-magical world and hiding it from other children and so on and so forth. So Tyler then comes into their life as an adolescent with magic, and Piper works really hard to guide him and teach him how to control his magic, etc. But there are bounty hunters after him, which is what his foster parents actually turn out to be, demonic bounty hunters. And then they discover that fire starters, which is the type of magical that he is, are coveted and raised as bodyguards for the source of all evil, and so that is why the bounty hunters are after Tyler. So they then decide to pose as the bounty hunters, take Tyler to Ludlow, who then ends up freezing Tyler, and they get kicked out, return to the manor. Paige is the one who writes her first Power of 3 spell in order to defeat Ludlow, and they realize that the cause of Phoebe's strange behavior and black and whiteness is the ring. Paige calls for it, she returns to normal. They then go to confront Ludlow. They vanquish him, and Tyler then chooses to bind his powers willingly so that he can have a normal life. And then Piper and Leo's fight is resolved because Piper now realizes the gift that Grams gave them by binding their powers as children they were able to have what she called the gift of innocence because they were able to grow up without fear, without being constantly chased or in danger of demons or any of those other things. Like they were able to have that experience as a normal life living among normal people before magic came, though she does emphasize that she still thinks magic is a gift. And we get a happily ever after, and Phoebe and Cole send Grams's ring down the drain of the bathtub at the end of the episode, showing that they have both decided that they are not going to lose their identities within their marriage when it happens. So now that we've been reminded about what happened in this episode, we're now going to rank the episode. As always, mostly objective ranking list first, followed then by the personal ranking list. And there was a lot that happened in this episode. So first we have our single episode supporting character introductions, 1 point each for a total of 3. We have Tyler Williams, the fire starter, Ludlow, who is, of course, the head of the training facility that teaches fire starters how to be servants and bodyguards of the Source. And then Stephen and Annette are the foster parents who are really disguised bounty hunters, and I'm counting them together because they are a couple, and every scene that they are in, they are together. So that brings us to 3 points. And then we have our multi-season main character developments, which are worth 4 points each. And first development is Phoebe being given Graham's engagement ring, which then turns out to be hexed, leading to most of the issues before then deciding to put it down the toilet. And then Cole, he both gets and loses his legal aid job at Paige's work in this episode, and that's 4 points each. Then, worth also 4 points, we have our multi-season main character growth, and of course that's Paige writing her first Power of 3 spell, which would be her magical growth. And then in Piper's case, we have the emotional growth of coming to see the good in Graham's decision to bind their powers, and consider that to be like the gift of innocence in their childhood and all of that. So that brings us to the end of our positive points, which puts us up at 19. However, there were a couple negatives in the episode. So the first one, of course, is the negative messaging or behavior. And this one we might consider questionable. But technically, Paige did kidnap Tyler from her workplace, brought him home without permission, not her child. Not really her right to do so. Technically, she did kidnap him. Obviously, in the context of the show, we understand he's magical. He's their innocent of the episode. He's there to teach a lesson. He's got bounty hunters after him, etc., etc. So we as the audience fully understand why she took him home, but technically was kidnapping. Very negative behavior, so that's -2 points. And then we had -3 for our main relationship regression or breakup. And this, of course, has to do with Piper and Leo spending, basically when the episode opens, they're not speaking to each other at all because of their fight about binding the hypothetical future children's powers. Then, of course, while they're trying to help Tyler, they also are going back and forth on the same argument throughout the episode. At the very end of the episode, they do somewhat resolve that with Piper being more open to the concept thanks to getting to know Tyler, but fact is most of the episode and at the start of the episode off screen they were fighting and at the point of not speaking, so that would definitely be a bit of a regression to their happy relationship even if it does level out by the end. And that leaves us with 14 out of 10. Maximum score is a 10. That makes this a 10 out of 10 episode. And then, as always, when more than one episode has the same score, they are going to be scored in episode order on our mostly objective ranking, which means that in first we have Charmed again, followed by Hell Hath No Fury, Enter the Demon, A Night to Remember. This episode comes in 5th place as Lost and Bound, followed by A Page from the Past, Size Matters, Brain Drain, Muse to My Ears, Black as Coal, and in last place so far is Trial by Magic. My personal ranking for this episode is I did enjoy all of the plots except one in this particular episode. I liked the main plot with Tyler and with Leo and Piper and the lessons that they learned there, and the concept of the fire starter and this whole academy that makes bodyguards for the source, etc., etc. I really liked the side plot with Phoebe turning black and white. I thought that it was really funny, especially because it was so out of character and you just see her hair getting like bigger and bigger with the hairspray, and she's in the kitchen constantly and she's baking cookies and making soup, and it's just like, who is this person? Very, like I said, has comedic value. And then of course she just randomly turns black and white. Everybody sees it and she just giggles about it and goes back to the kitchen because of course she couldn't possibly be turning black and white. And then, of course, the fact that she's so helpless when they need her, and then that lets Paige grow. And Paige, of course, has the milestone in her magical journey of writing her first spell, which is great. But I'll admit, like, Cole getting a job, I did like the concept of it. But then, of course, first thing he does is complain about the size of the office, um, physically and bodily threaten the defendant that he is meant to prosecute. Um, gets fired same day. And of course, that's embarrassing for Paige because she's the one who recommended him on good values and he's no longer a demon. And I get a little bit of secondhand embarrassment from that. So I wasn't overly fond of that plot line. And there were also a couple small things, like, for example, when Leo, Piper, and Tyler show up at the academy where Ludlow is, guards come out and they're like, who are you and what are you doing here? Instead of saying, we're bodyguards and we've brought a fire starter, which is what their cover was, that they were taking over as bodyguards, Leo answers, oh, we got lost. And they're like, there's wards around this place, you can't find it by accident. And then that leads to like a bit of a conflict. But I was just there like, why don't you just say that you are bringing a fire starter and you're a bounty hunter? Because that was your cover. That's what you were posing as. Instead, he says he got lost. It's like, but either way, like, I really liked the episode. I found it very entertaining, but there, like, it wasn't like I said, the third plot wasn't overly fond of, and then there were some moments that just didn't make sense to me, like saying they got lost, though it was funny, but saying they got lost when they already had a cover pre-made before they even showed up. So I gave it an 8 out of 10 because it did have its flaws, but otherwise, really good episode, and I really did enjoy it. And that brings us to the personal ranking. In first, Hell Hath No Fury, Charmed Again, A Night to Remember. I put this episode in fourth, Lost and Bound, followed by Size Matters, Muse to My Ears, A Page from the Past, Brain Drain, Enter the Demon, Black as Coal, and then in last place for me as well is Trial by Magic. And then the series ranking so far. On our mostly objective ranking list, we have Season 3 in first at 76.36%, Season 2 second, 75%, and Season 1 in third at 73.18%. Season 4's pending score so far is 88 out of a possible 210. Personal ranking side, we have Season 3 at 76.82% in first, Season 1 in second at 71.5%, and then Season 2 in third place so far at only 56.82%. Season 4's pending score so far is 65 out of a possible 210. But with that, we have now rewatched and ranked Charmed Season 4, Episode 11, Lost and Bound. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.